Thank you, everybody, for being here. I'm Jason Plummer. I proudly represent the 55th State Senate District here in Springfield. Today's conversation is about Department of Corrections and serious issues that are impacting safety of our corrections officers, the inmates at the facilities, and our communities. LaToya Hughes, the acting director of Department of Corrections, was never qualified to lead the Department of Corrections. And today, the consequences of Governor Pritzker's decision to keep her in that position are undeniable. This is a critical public safety agency. The decisions the director makes and the leadership the director provides has life and death consequences for both inmates in the facilities and our corrections staff. Right now in the Department of Corrections, there's no coordination with immigration agencies at the federal level. Under the director's leadership, our Department of Corrections staff has been specifically directed to ignore federal law and refuse to coordinate with ICE. There is no reason convicted criminals who are in prison for committing heinous crimes on Illinoisans and who are illegal aliens should be released onto our streets. They should be deported to their home country. Directing our Department of Corrections staff to ignore federal immigration law puts politics ahead of public safety. That's completely unacceptable to the people of Illinois. Let's talk about lockdowns at our facilities and examples of issues with Department of Corrections staff safety. We know that staff assaults are at record levels right now. We know that there's issues with inmates being harmed while serving their sentences. Safety of corrections officers should be paramount. Without high morale, without plentiful safety or corrections officers, our facilities aren't going to be safe and our communities won't be safe. I've had numerous officers reach out to my office with terrible stories that have taken place within our facilities, and yet the Department of Corrections continues to refuse to make the reforms that are needed. It's unacceptable. Lockdown procedures aren't taking place like they used to take place within the Department of Corrections when contraband like weapons, drugs, cell phones are found within our facilities. Just recently, 2 prisoners were housed in the same cell who come from rival gangs. One murdered the other, and some say that contraband played a significant role in that. If we would actually shut down, or if we would actually lock down our facilities, we would be protecting inmates, we would be protecting staff, we would be protecting the citizens of Illinois and our communities. Because when they have drugs in a facility, people can be harmed. When they have weapons in a facility, people in the facility can be harmed. When they have cell phones in the facility, people in the facility can be harmed. People outside the facility can be harmed. Situations like these make our corrections department less safe, and it leads to harm. Speaking of inmate deaths, today in committee, the director of the Department of Corrections, or the acting director of the Department of Corrections, couldn't even tell me how many inmates have died this year within our facilities. If that doesn't disqualify you from the position, I don't know what does disqualify you from the position. We know inmates have died within our facilities due to drug exposure and other reasons, and I think the director of the Department of Corrections should know that number. When an inmate death takes place, they're supposed to be reported to her. Just unfathomable to me that we could have someone that doesn't even track something like that in charge of this department. Early release. Early release decisions are being made with zero transparency. Dangerous offenders are walking free on the streets of our communities after serving just a fraction of the time that they were sentenced to. This isn't just a LaToya Hughes problem. I want to be clear about that. This is a J.B. Pritzker management failure. It's another Governor Pritzker management failure. He put the wrong person in charge. He isn't going to take accountability for it, but he needs to fix it before more people are harmed. You know, in my position at the Republican spokesman on executive appointments, I've seen this movie before. I've seen Governor Pritzker time after time after time put politics ahead of sound public policy. I've seen him ignore the warnings of others and put people in positions that they shouldn't be in, and it's led to people dying. It's led to people being harmed. The Prisoner Review Board is a perfect example of this movie. Now we're playing it over again at the Department of Corrections. Leadership starts at the top. This is what happens when politics takes priority over qualifications, and Governor Pritzker is ultimately the person responsible for the tragedies that are taking place within the Department of Corrections. If Governor Pritzker is serious about public safety, if he is serious about the safety of the staff that serve Illinoisans in these facilities, and if he is serious about making sure people who are sentenced to crime can serve their time safely, be rehabilitated, and go out and be productive members of society, he will withdraw the nomination of LaToya Hughes to this position immediately, and we will find a leader that can take the Department of Corrections and lead it in a manner similar to what we are seeing in other states. With that being said, I'm going to turn it over to State Senator Terri Bryant.
Senator Plummer. Illinois State Senator Terri Bryant from the 58th Senate District. I represent all or parts of 14 counties in deep southern Illinois, which includes actually in the district 5 correctional facilities, and peripherally, depending on where you talk about them, 10 to 12 facilities. So what's happening in our correctional system right now is a direct result of Governor Pritzker's failed leadership. He appointed someone who was never qualified to be the director of the Department of Corrections. And now we're seeing the consequences of that. For more than 2 years, I've worked to expose the dangerous and deteriorating conditions within the Department of Corrections inside the facilities. You all know that not too many months ago, I visited 9 different facilities. You could go all the way from Murfreesboro up to Dixon. So the entire width and breadth of the state to make sure that we were getting, and all different levels of security to make sure that I was getting a full picture of what was going on. The conditions that are putting both correctional officers and incarcerated individuals at risk. So all of these conditions are not just hurting the staff, but there are deaths, as Senator Plummer talked about. For the director not to be able to tell you how many deaths there have been in this year alone is ridiculous, because we know that there was one just a couple of days ago at Pinckneyville Correctional Center, and just a couple of weeks ago at Henry Hill Correctional Center, the one that Senator Plummer referenced. So just those 2 alone are inmate deaths. During the time that I toured these facilities across the state, I met directly with the people on the front lines who were brave enough to speak out about what's happening behind the walls. Sometimes they'd pull you over to the side. Sometimes we'd have to have conversations a little bit later. It's hard for them to talk about this stuff, so you know that it's bad when the staff inside the facilities is willing to talk to someone. So through the conversations and the investigations, I gathered reports from 20 correctional facilities, or 20 are the ones that I'm willing to talk about. These include shocking details of drugs entering facilities, not just through the mail, but specifically through the mail, staff being exposed to dangerous substances like fentanyl. I FOIA'd some information, which I ultimately had to appeal to the Attorney General's office for, and they ordered them to give me some documentation that shows not only fentanyl or K2, but cocaine, heroin, ecstasy, all inside these facilities. So what we're seeing is confirmed drug-related inmate deaths, violent staff assaults, and then the increasing presence of homemade weapons. What we're seeing isn't isolated, it's systemic. When I can go to 9 different institutions with all different levels all over the state and see basically the same thing at every one of those institutions, you know that it is systemic. During the morning's Executive Appointment Committee hearing, the acting director confirmed that they have not implemented any form of mail scanning. I feel like I've been very reasonable in asking for the mail scan, in that I believe it's not the end-all to beat-all, but it is a very important component to stopping the drugs from coming in. And honestly, I was told by the Department of Corrections, and this would be another example of why it's difficult to get behind a director that continually tells you, makes false statements. I came before you guys a few months ago and told you that they had signed a contract to mail scan. Totally and completely false. Not on my part. I'm going by the information that was given to me by the director's office. They've signed a contract. The contract is to give the inmates tablets. But the contract is not for mail scanning. So the tablets, and she said today in committee, they have the ability to scan mail, but so far they haven't scanned the mail in any of the institutions. So mail continues to be a major gateway for dangerous contraband and a direct threat to the safety of the staff and the inmates alike. So the longer that the department, the longer that the Pritzker administration drags their feet on implementing real safety measures, the more people's lives are in danger. And right now, they are dragging their feet. The Pritzker administration is dragging their feet about holding people accountable. So I would say to you, we absolutely have to have real leadership within the Department of Corrections that's willing and knowledgeable to take care of what these failures are. So we need a comprehensive strategy that addresses all security risks, not just the ones that are politically convenient to admit. The staff who work in these facilities are showing up every day under unsustainable conditions. The individuals in custody, many of whom are working toward rehabilitation, are also being affected by the neglect, and they all deserve better than the silence and spin from this administration. They deserve real leadership, real accountability, and real solutions, not more bureaucratic indifference from the top. I join Senator Plummer today in saying to the governor, this has been a failed appointment, and we are demanding the immediate removal of Director Hughes's nomination for the Director of Department of Corrections.
Senator, or either senator, have you got any kind of sense, like with the whole Logan Stateville issue, for example? They closed down, IDOC closes down Stateville as a maximum security prison, obviously, so there were people incarcerated who were transferred all over the place. Have you got any sense whether a move like that has, exacerbated any kind of conditions at other prisons because of the security levels at some of these prisons, or if it's caused overpopulation or anything at all with that?
Sure. Yeah. I have a real indication, no. It was happening way before they started moving inmates out of Stateville for the closure. So many of the problems are coming from Lawrence Correctional Center. We have problems at Henry Hill Correctional Center. We have problems at Western Correctional Center. We have problems at Menard Correctional Center. And although the director wants to make it look like it's all at the maximum security prisons, she gave us numbers today, her staff gave me numbers today that show there is a large number at the maximum security prisons, but there is an unreasonable number at mediums and minimum securities. So those inmates from Stateville, the majority of them are not going to the mediums or the minimums.
Concerns about contraband, about non-citizens not being handed over to ICE, and where are they at on this?
Well, when I said I've seen this movie before, I'll take you back to the PRB and how that was handled. And, I believe the reason why Director Hughes is an acting director and is not a confirmed director is, one, they're concerned about taking her nomination forward because I think some of our Democrat colleagues object to it. I think the other thing to bear in mind, just like with the Prisoner Review Board, once those people were confirmed, they had their salary, they had their job, and they were kind of away from the governor's office. By keeping them in as these acting positions where he controls whether or not they stay in that position, my question would be, who does the director work for? Does she work for the people of Illinois, and does she work for the staff at the facilities, or is she working for the governor and his political priorities? And that's where my concern is. And I think the fact that she's been the acting director for as long as she has been, and they're not moving her to the floor, says a lot about what the Democrats really think about this nomination.
What do you think it's going to take with the PRB issue? There was just a horrible situation that cost somebody their life. What's it going to take?
Well, what I would tell you is, his name was Jaden Perkins. He was 11 years old. And I think people in this building are responsible for what happened there. An 11-year-old like that shouldn't die in that way. It's a horrible story. The director didn't even know how many inmates have died in our facilities this year. So who are they? Apparently they don't mean anything. And so, you put the tragic, unnecessary murder of an 11-year-old on the front page of a newspaper, it's going to get people's attention. I think prisoners dying should get people's attention too, but apparently the governor doesn't think so.
So I want to add to that because in my research, I have documentation of 9 deaths, just the fentanyl deaths, not all the other drugs, for fiscal 23, fiscal 24. Those were all under her watch. And we've given her plenty of time. We've done plenty of press conferences. I've talked to every one of you sitting in here about this issue. She's had time to get this all straightened out and has been unable or unwilling to do it. I don't know how to answer for her. The governor needs to answer for his appointment. She should be removed from that appointment. Wants to find her a different job, whatever, I don't care. But the people that I care about, who still work in the Department of Corrections, they deserve better. And to be honest with you, those who are incarcerated, I told my staff all the time, in the 20 years that I was there, it's not your job to penalize someone. A judge and a jury of their peers put them here. It's your job to make sure that we all go home alive at the end of the day, staff and offenders alike, when they've completed their term there. So at this point, it is only by the grace of God that we have not had deaths of staff with the exposures that are taking place, but we've had lots of inmate deaths under her leadership, and that is totally unacceptable.
Yeah, look, this isn't a political thing. Senator Bryant just hit the nail on the head. We are lucky that we haven't woken up to newspaper headlines of dead correction staffers because of the failures of the Pritzker administration and the failures of the acting director. We're lucky. Prisoners have died, and that's awful. It's only time before something tragic happens. I mean, staff assaults are through the roof. We're just lucky someone hasn't died. And the governor needs to change course real fast, or it's going to happen. And I don't know how much bigger of a red light we can shoot off than this.
So what are kind of the next steps after this? Like, is it just more press conferences? Like, what do you think you guys can do next to maybe fix this issue?
Well,
Not our job.
we're doing our job, but there's only one person that can fix this. There's only one person that can institute the reforms at the Department of Corrections. There's only one person that can ensure the safety of the staff and the inmates within these facilities. His name is J.B. Pritzker. He's on the second floor, and his inability to manage government shocks me, and this is just another example. And again, we are lucky that this hasn't been worse than it has been, but there's only one person that can fix it. His name's J.B. Pritzker. He needs to quit looking at Washington, D.C., and he needs to look at Illinois and fix the problems here.
Jason, oh, sorry, go ahead.
What's her deadline to be confirmed?
She's been reappointed.
Yeah, so we did this a year ago, right? A lot of these issues we talked about a year ago. Just on mail scan, we were told over a year ago there was pilot programs in place and that was going to be rolled out within a year. Here we are, more than a year later, no mail scan. Synthetic drugs are getting in there; they're hurting people. So we're doing our job. She's in a position right now as acting director, and Governor Pritzker needs to pull her from that position and put someone competent in there to ensure safety within the department.
But does the Senate have to act on it by the end of May?
The Senate does not have to act on it by the end of May.
Yes, Senator, forgive me if you probably talked about this on the Senate floor, but the new PRB reform bill that's out there.
Yep.
In light of the Jaden Perkins case, what's your all position on that? I know that Senator McClure had raised concerns that it was watered down from
Yep.
a past effort. So what do you think is lacking, in this legislation?
Well,
The current legislation.
what's lacking in the current legislation is everything they pulled from the 58-0 bipartisan bill that passed the Senate. We had Republicans and Democrats stand up together, pass reforms for the Prisoner Review Board that were logical, that were reasonable, that were bipartisan. Then the governor's office, after it passes the Senate 58-0, then the governor's office gets involved, waters it down because he is so far left on criminal justice issues. And again, I've seen the movie before. He screwed up bad on the Prisoner Review Board, and people died because of it. He's screwing up bad on Department of Corrections right now, and people have died because of it. Maybe he doesn't care because they're inmates, but I care. And it's only time before something tragic happens to a staffer. So look, he watered down bipartisan, reasonable reform on a criminal justice issue to reform PRB. Why? It's bipartisan legislators want to see the Department of Corrections fixed. Only one person can fix it, and he needs to start paying attention and get the job done.
So, we haven't had any staff deaths yet, but what we're seeing is staff who have been exposed to the synthetic drugs, who are now suffering from kidney issues, high blood pressure. There's a lot of questions that still have to be asked about what might be ongoing and long going in regard to just those exposures alone. So I hope that you can see the urgency that we're trying to push here today, because people really are dying, and the potential of them continuing down that path is great, and it is urgent.